If you spend enough time in the online chess YouTube space, what you'll discover is that there is no shortage of content related to the opening phase of the game. You will find a variety of videos about opening traps, various lines to use, what to avoid, how to checkmate your opponent within the first 10 moves. The list goes on, and eventually you find yourself drawn into a deep rabbit hole where you're exploring the poison pawn variation of the Sicilian Najdorf. Now, if you're not familiar with your openings, that's okay, and that won't mean very much. I use that to simply illustrate a point. So, what often gets overlooked in the realm of chess study and improvement is the endgame phase. There was a world champion decades and decades ago, Jose Capablanca, who remarked multiple times on the importance of studying the endgame, and this is a sentiment which I wish to echo here. So, what we're going to be doing today in this video is we are going to be going through some basic king and pawn endgames. Some of these aren't, I guess, that complicated, right? Or at least in theory, they're not that complicated. It's just kings and pawns on the board, as you can see in the position which I have here. So I am going to be drawing here from a list of puzzles available on the Lichess database. And where I'm just going to be going through and I'm solving some of these. So you can find videos on this kind of thing, how to win an endgame where it's just kings and pawns. But I thought that this format would be helpful to illustrate some of the key ideas and concepts which are important in these kinds of endgames. So how we're going to do this is we're going to start off with some pretty easy puzzles. So on Lichess, there's a setting where you can adjust how difficult a puzzle is. You can make it a lot easier than your current skill level, or you can make it a lot harder. So right now, I have it set to the lowest possible level, which the website will, let me go. So I'm here, and on this position, we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. So you see here that both sides have pawns, which are on the verge of promoting, right? So our goal is pretty simple. We're trying simply to get to the other side and promote our pawn first. So in this one, there's actually an interesting trick if it'll let us go all the way up to that point. So we have pawn f6, and then pawn b3, pawn a3 up, and then pawn f7. And then we promote, and then black promotes, but now we have a discovery attack where we take the queen and we go queen f6. So the technical term is that this is a skewer, and now we go takes, and then here black is going to take, and then we're going to take, and then move the king out of the way, and then this pawn just goes up and promotes anyways. So yeah, well, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next puzzle now. And again, I'm going to do a couple of these on this difficulty level, and then we'll work our way up. And eventually I'm going to do some harder puzzles still. Now, I am not perfect at this kind of endgame, of course. I went back and studied some of my pawn endgames in preparation for this video, and I realized I am just a little bit rusty, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think hopefully I should do okay, but again, as we get further through, so there will be a point where, I don't know, I may get overwhelmed or whatever, right? Because these actually, again, do get really tricky once you keep going through. So let's see what the next one is. And remember, I do not know what these puzzles are going to be right now, so let's see what we got. Okay, so a couple things here. So the idea that that white is trying to go for, we're moving here as black. So what white wants to do essentially is go king takes, and then king jumping out of the way, and then the pawn just pushes down, right? And then the king will, come down too, right? And then the pawn just keeps moving up until eventually promotes, right? So we're not going to try to stop that, right? We don't want to stop white from pushing that pawn, and the reason we don't want to stop it is because we are about to promote first. So what we're going to do is we're going to go king c6, king b7, king takes a7, and then this pawn promotes unimpeded, and white is powerless to do anything to stop it. So let's see. So king c6, king b7, and yeah, so see, so again, white here is trying to get the king out of the way, right, so that this pawn can go ahead and promote. But fortunately, we win the race first. Yep. And then the pawn here is just going to keep pushing. And then, there it is, folks. We made it to the other side first. Hoorah! Okay, moving on then. Alright, so let's see, so we're kind of in a bit of a gridlocked position here, right? So there's literally only one good move here. So like if you look here, our pawns are all locked in, right? This pawn is locked in, this pawn is locked in, this pawn is locked in and can't go anywhere. The F pawn here, yes, it can move, but it can move here or it can move here. So if it just moves here, then just takes, and then promotes. If you move here, going up to, you have the en passant rule, where then takes, and then again just boom, boom, and then promotes. So that leaves us then with a king move. So we don't have a many king moves here, so we can move the king here to a3, we can move to b3, or we can move to b4. So then what I'm going to do here, I'm going to explain why first, is I'm going to play king b4. And so the reason here is that white is really trying to hold on to stopping this a pawn and keeping it from promoting. So once I move here, though, these squares on h4 and f4 are no longer open for the white king, although actually neither of those squares are open anyway. But the point though is that we are going to literally force the white king to move away, right? So we can then get our king in front of this pawn, either maybe like taking this pawn or something, right? And then yeah, we'll go from there. So yep, and then king h2. Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and do king h4 here. So the reason I don't want to do king f4 is I would rather try to keep my king closer to the white king, right? So there's no real possibility for it to get away. Now, granted, I'm not sure how much that actually matters, given how it'll go down. But just as a general habit, that is something that I try to do. So here, oh, did I get that? Oh, I see. Sorry, I did the wrong move. So what you're actually supposed to do here is king f4, right. And then the idea is you can then go here in front, or you can go here and take the e-pawn. I was thinking it didn't matter as much there. I think that king h4 would have still probably been fine. But yeah, this one just wins it a little faster. So that's on me, guys. Okay, let's move forward, see what else we've got here. Okay, let me see. Okay, so this pawn here is trying to promote. There's not much of a chance that the black king is going to be able to get over and stop this damage that's going on here. Actually, no, hold on, let's see. So, let's say king takes, king e4, king g5, and then king f3, and then if king takes g6, then the king takes here. And then, let's see, so in that case, so boom, 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 boom. So in that case, we're going to move the king over here, trying to snag up these black pawns. And so the idea here is we are actually going to just get back first, because again, at the end of the sequence I just outlined, the white king is here on g6, and then the black king is here on g4. And so what we're gonna do from there is we're just gonna move to the side dancing. I'll show you what that looks like in a second if it lets us go that far, but I think that's kind of what I'm looking at here. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and just take that. I mean, again, taking is kind of forced, right? We don't really have much of a choice in the matter. Yup. So and then King E3, yeah. So he's trying to come up here behind the pawn. And then here. And then yeah, well, we don't have a choice. We're gonna just take it. So yeah, it seems something. Apparently that was it. And so yeah, again, then we're gonna just, go across here, right? If you're interested, you could recreate this similar position on a board or a board editor on your phone or such if you don't want to see how the rest of this plays out. But yeah, for now we're just gonna keep moving on. So okay, so a little bit of a similar position again here. So our king is over here on this side of the board, right? So I can't just go up and try to take that pawn, of course, right? Because the square is covered. So what I'm thinking here, we're probably going to do is we're going to want to go king b4, and then king c5, and then take, and then the king can help us to take everything else, right? So the nice thing here is that this pawn here is covering the king's escape squares on e7 and on g7, right? So it's going to take a little more maneuvering. So what black probably wants to do here is go like king e8, and then maybe like king d7, and then like king c6 kind of thing, right? So hold on, let's see. So I think we can cut that off, right? So king b4, king e8, king c5, king d7, and then king takes d5. Yes, we can make it happen. Okay. Right. Let's do this, guys. So yeah, so we're gonna go here, king b4. Sure, yep, and here. Yes! I'm honorable. So I think I'm going to do just one more of these, and then we'll move on and increase the difficulty just a little bit. I've been a little surprised by how difficult some of these have been. I thought they'd be like super easy, but I mean, yeah, so I don't know, this one's a little tricky. So white here is on the verge of promoting his H pawn, right? So he has 1, 2, 3 squares to go. So we can't really do anything to stop this pawn, right? So say we try to go king b4 here, right? Trying to get next to the pawn, but then the pawn just goes a3, and then it's just running away, right? So I think the idea here, what we're trying to do then, is that we're trying to simply promote one of our pawns first, right? So I think we're going to have to go c3 here, which I think that works, right? Let's see, yeah, so a6, pawn c3, pawn a7, and then we'll... Oh no, this does work, yeah. So yeah, we're going to go for the same kind of idea as so then we're going to go takes, and then the pawn is going to promote, and then we're going to promote first, only by bird, and then black white is going to promote, and then we're going to come back up to b2, and we're going to skewer that queen again. Again, this will make a little more sense in a second. So yeah, we're going to go pawn c3. Okay, so yeah, we just went ahead and took then, so it's about the same situation as before. And then yeah, we're just going to take, can't advance it, right? So, yep. And then we're going to promote the pawn to a queen. And then, yeah, like I said, the idea here is that he's going to go h8 and promote, but then we're going to go queen b2 or queen c3. And then the king has to move. And then we just take. And then the king comes over, right? And it's helping us to snag up the rest of these pawns. So, yeah. Okay, yeah, so like I said, we're going to increase this difficulty here just a little bit more. Now we'll see what this does to us in terms of, complicating the game and such, right? Okay, so, again, similar kind of positions that we've seen so far. So we are gridlocked, right? So the c pawn can't advance to c4 because then either pawn takes and then runs away. We can move the a pawn because again takes and runs away. So we can't move the king away from this pawn, right? So like we can't move it here, or like actually, hold on. So this one's actually a little interesting. So let's say like, okay, yeah, I think I'm right here. So crap. So one idea here that you can do is you can go king d4. And the idea here is that you're going to infiltrate, right? And then so like just snatch up this pawn and then this pawn, and maybe come back and then getting the you know, and then like trying to go back and like get the a pawn, right? So the problem there though is that you're not fast enough, right? You're just not fast enough in that case, because if you go like here, then takes, and then king c5, and then king g3. And the pawn is just too far advanced. You can't stop it. So, yeah, I think here king f3 would be the best move. So, okay. So, yeah. Actually, this is 4. Oh, wow, that was 4. So, yeah. Black did king c5 here. And so the idea is that, like, you know, black can't move the king, right? Because, like, this square is covered, this square on e5 is covered, g4 is covered, g5 is covered, right? So it's just, you know, like pushing the pawn, right? So the, you know, king doesn't have to ban this one, right? So, yeah, in this case, then we're going to just go pawn takes e5. And, yeah, good. Okay, so, I'm going to take a look at this here. I want to make sure it got worked out. So, boom. Okay, so this is a chance, I think, here for me to teach you guys one of the most important concepts in these king and pawn endgames, which is the opposition. So, what we want ideally is to get essentially to a position where it's like we take here on d4, right? And then we want to get the king over here to e5, and then we want the white king on f7. So that position is what is called the opposition, where the kings are standing in front of each other. And in that position, if it is us to move, right, where we have the opposition, we have the 1 square of distance, we're going to win. But if white has the move there, then it is a draw. So I want to just go ahead and calculate this out here, right? So, one thing is, so like, king takes d4, obvious, right? So let's say though that like white goes like king f7 kind of thing, right? And then if we just go king e4. Have I been saying these coordinates wrong? So I'm sorry. Anyways, sorry. If we go with king d4 there, then white is going to come over here to d2, in which case we then have to move away, and then the pawn will this pawn at least will never promote. And of course, white isn't going to just go ahead and move this pawn forward, right? Because then we just push and promote. So yeah, well, we have to be just a little bit careful here. So what I'm thinking is we're going to go king d4, and then in that case, if he goes king f7, then what we actually need to do is go king e4, and only then can we make the advance to e5, sorry, to d4, or potentially push forward. Just, you know, yeah, like, sorry, just, like, yeah, this, right? So, yeah. Let's go ahead and do this. So, king takes e5. Oh, no, he... Oh, I see, okay. Okay, so yeah, well, we will have to abandon this d-pawn here. So, yeah, well, in this case, white is just too close to promote, right? So, like, if we go takes here on g5, then, yeah, white is just going to, come down here and promote, right? And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 squares to go to with the pawn being attacked by the king the whole way. And so we'll just, yeah, we'll never make it, guys. So let's see. So I'm thinking, takes g5, h6, king f6, king h7, king g7, and then, yeah, we've got the pawn promotes on h8, and then the king takes on h8, and then we just come back up to defend this pawn and promote it. Again, this pawn here, though, right, this pawn here on d5 is going to fall no matter what, right? There's just, nothing we can do about it. So another technical term you guys will find in your king and pawn endgames here is the rule of the square. This is a pretty common idea. I'm just going to walk you through it real quick in case you guys don't know. I'm actually going to go ahead and just play this out so you can see. Although, actually, before I do so, yeah, I'll just play it. So, takes. And then, so, we're going to go here to f6, right? So, the rule of the square is that if your king and the pawn that is promoting are the same distance away from the promotion square, or if your king is closer, then you can stop it. But if your king has more squares to travel than the opponent's does, then you just won't. So yeah, we're going to go ahead here, play king f6, and then he plays pawn h7, king g7, and then promotes, and then king takes. And yeah, so here white's, I'm going to try to come in, gobble up this pawn, right? And then we're just going to bring our king back up. I'm assuming here we'll continue, right? So in this case, we'll bring the king back up. And then the king will try to go, like, d3 or something maybe, or like d4, I don't know. And then I'm going to come in here and just try to get around this pawn. So when you're promoting a pawn like this, you always want to have you want to get to a point where you have the king in front. So we're going to do one more of these, and then I am going to increase the difficulty again a little bit more, and then, yeah, we'll see where we go from there. So in this case, the king can't get around this way because it's blocked. King can't take either of these pawns. So, Okay, so the question is, do I move my king, or do I move one of these pawns? So, So I'm trying to think. So, like, if pawn a5, sorry, pawn h5, pawn takes h5, pawn takes h5. We're just going to count the squares real quick to see who promotes first. Because you'll see neither side has a chance of stopping the other, right? So we're going to go pawn f4, pawn h4, pawn f5, pawn h3, pawn f6, pawn g7, sorry, pawn h2, pawn f7, and then promotes, and then the king is in check and has to move. So, I'm doing pretty solid there. But, and yeah, I think there that I'm pretty sure the taking is forced, right? Because if, black, like, doesn't take, right? If he just, like, goes here to f4, right? Then we just take, and there's nothing for it. So, I'm thinking that's what I want to try to do. So, pawn h5. Yes, okay. And then takes. Again, we work this out, so the f-pawn is trying to push. But we'll get there first. And yep, there's the check. We won the race, gang. Alright, okay. Yeah, let's go ahead then and just increase this a little bit more. Okay, yeah, this one, to me, like, feels like it should be pretty straightforward, right? So, actually, so I'm trying to think here. So, like, my instinct here is to try to move this king up to protect this pawn, right? So, my fear, though, sorry, I'm thinking of moving my king, like, up here to e5 or something, right? And then, oh, crap. Sorry, guys, didn't mean to do that. That was not my move. Wrong click. So yeah, what I'm kind of thinking here is that, yeah, if pawn f4, this king is gonna come up to c4, and then he's gonna try to run the pawn down. So, also in that case, I'll move the pawn here, right? So yeah, then I have the pawn on c5. So we'll see who wins the race. So pawn f6, pawn c4. Pawn f7, pawn c3, and then pawn promotes. So, yeah, I think we'll. Hold on. Was that? Yeah, pawn f4. I think was the move. Yeah. Yeah. So I think. Yeah, I'm just gonna try to push it. Yep. I'm trying to think. I wonder if maybe king e5 would have been okay there too, because in that case, if pawn b5, then we still just go ahead and promote, right? And so the reason I do this is because I don't want the black king to be trying to sneak in. Although it actually has quite a bit of work ahead of it, though, trying to get past my king. But yeah, so let's say like pawn f6, pawn b5, pawn f7. Pawn b4. Yeah, it's all the same. So, yeah. Okay. Okay, so let's see here. All right, so, white to move here, so, yeah, this one's actually a little tricky. This is a little tricky. Okay, so, black king, right, is going to come up and gobble this pawn, and there's nothing we can do about it. There's literally nothing, right? This pawn is objectively, factually speaking, as good as dead. So, you know, I think what I'm thinking then is that, we're going to want to go king c3 here. And so the reason for that is so black is going to come and try to gobble up this pawn, right? So king c3, and then, you know, like king f3. And then here, we're going to then play king d3. And then king takes g4, which then, fortunately, leaves us with king e4. And then king c5, king d5, then threatening to take the pawn. But the thing is, I don't know, you see guys, this is tricky because in this case, right, we have to then get the king over here to take a c5, and then get the king out of the way, and then promote the pawn. Well, all the while, all this pawn needs to do is just promote. Sorry guys, by the way, there's a lot of arrows here, there's just a lot of movement to be tracking, and I'm trying to be as, I guess, visually accurate as I can, right? I'm trying to show and illustrate what my thought process is. So the thing is, no, actually, no. So how about this? So maybe instead we still go king c3, king f3, and then we move the pawn to b4, and then either, yeah, so yeah, if either pawn takes this, right, so let's say like pawn takes b4, right, then king goes to b3, and then the pawn just kind of runs, right? It's hard from the black king to try to stop it, even if the king does stop it, then we can just get around and gobble up these pawns and promote anyway. So yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna go for here. So king c3. Oh crap, that wasn't a move. Well, What was it then? Was it pawn g5 maybe? No, that's not it. King b2? Or does it want me to... Oh, I think it wants me to play pawn b4 now. Yeah, okay, yeah. So... No? Oh, yes, and then pawn c5. Yeah. And then the pawn is just getting ahead and there's no stopping it. Yeah, sorry I didn't work that one out, guys. That was a good one, though. That was a really, really good one. That was really tricky. I think I'm going to try just a couple more and then call it a day. Okay, so... crap, this one's hard. So, my initial instinct here is to go king d5. And so my reason is that here that the king has no choice but to retreat to d2 or e2 or c2. But the thing is, I don't know the way through there, guys. So let's see. Our other option here is to go king f4, and then king takes d4, and then king takes f3, and then king takes c5, and then king takes g4, and then the idea there is we're trying to just run the pawn. So, I mean, yeah, we're going to run this pawn, right? And then white's going to try to run this one after everything's taken, so... I'm trying to think, who gets there first, then? Who gets to the great end of this race first? Because, I actually don't know if I have any other option besides king f4, right? So again, I could, do king d5 and try to hang on to this pawn, but it doesn't do anything, right? It's an extremely impassive move, right? So, I have no escape squares over here, right? So there's no way to get on that side, right? So, yeah, this side here is objectively, I think, the only way that I am actually going to find any real way through this debacle. So, let's see how it goes. So, king f4. Why isn't it like that? Why didn't it like king f4? I thought hopefully king f4 would do it. Is it king d5 that it wants? No! Oh, I think what it wants is pawn g5. Yeah. Yes, there it is. Okay. Hold on. So here, I went pawn g5, right? And then why went king d2? Why didn't white go... yes, he can't... sorry, guys, I had a bit of brain fart there. I was wondering why he didn't go king e3, but that's, of course, guarded by the pawn. So, and that's true, yeah. So in this case, yes, since I didn't do king f4 first, now this pawn is still guarded, and so it was just able to take, right? So now we go king f4. Yeah, that's it. Well, I may come back and do this again sometime. I want to thank you guys for watching this. I really hope that you got some good instructional value out of this. If you guys have any other thoughts or questions about anything you saw in this video, if there are any similar kind of endgame patterns or just chess themes in general you would like to see more of, do let me know down in the comments underneath this video. And yeah, that's all I have for you today. Keep playing chess, my friends.